There's Lars.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Mayor?
Hello?
Mayor?
Yes. Are you able to hear me?
I saw, yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, great.
My phone went out for a minute. I saw on Facebook today that this is the anniversary of the starting of the Vietnam War, and I just wanted to thank you for your service.
Mayor?
Yes, sir. Oh,
Mayor?
thank you.
Hello?
I was support personnel, never made it to Vietnam, but
Hey, that's the best place to serve.
well, the base I was at was Nellis Air Force Base, and that's where all the pilots came immediately prior to their flying to Vietnam and serving there. So, and it looks like you're frozen again, Don. Okay, well, since it's time to start, we'll see if Don's connection starts working again. Officially, though, we do have a full quorum present, I believe that.
Now, you were for,
Yeah, Steve was the last one and he's here. So we have all seven members of the council participating electronically. And Don's working again, so you might want to keep an eye on that, Don, as we go, because it may kick out again. So
yeah, I'll watch it.
okay, then we are in order. We have all our council members here. We have our minutes of September 22nd. If someone would make a motion in a second on the minutes.
Move for approval of the minutes.
Second?
Properly before us. Hearing no further comments, we will consider the minutes approved without further comments. And hearing no objections, we will declare that unanimously in the positive. Next, item 4, our review of further meetings tonight. We have 2 scheduled, our regular city council meeting and the RDA meeting. And on those, my understanding is there have been no changes. Any further concerns or comments from the council? Hearing none, we will move on to our first public hearing that we will discuss tonight, that we will have on our agenda next week. This is application GP-2-2020. We will have ordinance 20-43 to adopt an active transportation plan as part of West Valley City's general plan. With that then, oh, it looks like Jody. She's there ready and waiting. So I guess we'll turn it over to you for any explanation of that.
Okay, so yep, Jody Nat with West Valley City Planning and Zoning. And so what we are reviewing is the general plan amendment to adopt the West Valley City Active Transportation Plan. And so hopefully you can see my screen there. And basically, so one of the goals of the current general plan is to develop a safe and effective network of trails, bike paths, and walking paths in West Valley City. So as we currently stand, the city has a basic bicycle and pedestrian network, but we wanted to expand on that and improve the connectivity, access, and ease of use. So in order to do that, we looked at implementing, again, this active transportation plan. And so this, again, would serve as a guide for implementation of a bicycle and pedestrian network throughout the city and used as a tool to improve the existing infrastructure and then strategically add new infrastructure at the time when budget allows. So in order to accomplish this, the city applied for a transportation and land use connection grant. It's called the TLC, and that was through Wasatch Front Regional Council. So we were awarded that grant, which was a $75,000 grant. And then West Valley City matched $25,000 to that. And then the city partnered with Fair and Pierce to develop the following plan. So the first part of that was establishing a steering committee. And basically through the TLC, they have a partnership, again, with Wasatch Front Regional Council, Salt Lake County, UDOT, UTA. And so we worked with staff members from those organizations along with city staff as the foundation of our steering committee. And so the first thing we did with that was we adopted the following 3 goals as part of our plan and just what steered our selection for our priority transportation routes. So those goals were to enhance the safety of active transportation users, to foster increased active transportation usage throughout the city for all user groups, and then increase the total lane miles of bike lanes and sidewalks. So to accomplish that, we basically went through a data collection phase. And so we looked at existing plans and policies, different programs that West Valley City already has, the Wasatch Front Regional Council Transportation Plan, the Salt Lake County Active Transportation Plan, reviewed all existing infrastructure and coordinated that with transit routes. Destinations like schools and parks were looked at as well. We use Strava data, so that's basically like a GPS app, and that helps us just see where people are going and what facilities they're using. We also looked at collision data, so where accidents were happening and just where there were serious fatalities or injuries and areas that needed improvement. And then we also had a public outreach component. So there were 3 pop-up events that was at the Cultural Celebration Center, the Fitness Center, and then the Gerald Wright School, and had an online engagement period. And so people could get online and comment on a map. We had about 100 comments from that. That was pretty successful. And then basically just compiled that all together and evaluated all of that data as part of those steering committee guiding principles, and then came up with the following plan. And so basically there were 3 different tiers for projects. So, and it was all ranked on priority and just which ones were more feasible to get completed. And so the tier 1 were the highest priority, and those were then advanced into some conceptual designs. And so you should have a copy of the larger plan. I just basically grabbed a few pages from that, but you can see the more detailed map. It's on page 43, and then the table is on 44 of that larger plan. But again, we just took those tier 1 projects to get more design guidelines. So 2 examples from that were 1300 West. And so Public Works actually already used that information as they were doing their roadway project. And then they were able to add the recommended bike paths. And then another one that was important was working with UDOT with the Mountain View Corridor project, and just making sure that the city provided lots of connections to trailheads and just prevented Mountain View Corridor from being a significant barrier to non-motorized traffic, and just make sure we provided those connections. So basically, again, just the active transportation plan, we wanted to make sure that it addressed those principles that were set forth in the existing general plan. And the big thing was this, it was just to make sure the map identified critical nodes and provided connectivity, and basically provided a timeline for project planning and implementation. And so now actually making this part of the general plan just helps accomplish that goal and make it a more robust tool, so that in the future as projects come in, it can just guide our efforts and help us prioritize improvements. And then again, just make sure we strategically implement this transportation network. So that's why we're asking now that the plan has been completed to adopt that as part of the general plan. I don't know if there's any questions, anything you'd like me to cover in more detail.
Council members? Jody, I do have one.
Sure.
We had initiated a active transportation type plan around some of our parks where we identified a circular trail and included some signage. They were not major pieces of trail, but I know that there were several of those that they have done with signage. Is that a part of this plan as well?
So are you looking at Centennial Park?
No, I know that there was Ironwood Park, there was Woodledge Park, and I believe there were a couple of more that Nancy Day had arranged where they put up signage and identified a trail. This is a little different in that it already exists except for the signage. That is to take and create a path without crossing streets around the park so that, and identifying the length so that local neighborhood kids and others who are just out for casual rides can do so in safety and in their own neighborhood.
Okay, yeah, so that would have been included in that data collection piece. So we took all the existing plans and then implemented that and included that in our updated plan. So it also would be in that that checklist of projects. And so if some of it was already done, it might not be in that matrix with that much detail. But we definitely looked at all the existing plans and made sure to include those in this plan as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure which tier that's in, but you know, as far as priority, probably fairly low, but don't want to see it disappear. So probably at another time, we'll get an update on that from Parks and Recreation. So thank you. Any other questions, council members?
I've got a question.
Yes.
And Jody, thank you. Very appealing, user-friendly presentation format here for sure. My question is just regarding electric scooters or one wheels. And I'm wondering if, I know that's not the same as riding a bike per se, but do those type of, do our city regulations around where those are permitted or how they're permitted to be used, you know, like the bird scooters, that kind of thing. I know they're way bigger in other cities, but is that part of the conversation here when we talk about active transportation, or is that just do we consider that a totally separate discussion in terms of those kinds of electric scooters or one wheels?
Yeah, it would be a different discussion, and that did actually come up in kind of that initial discussion to see where you would put that. But basically the definition for an active transportation plan, it's any self-propelled human-powered mode of transportation such as walking or bicycling. So, you know, when you get more into the fine-tuned detail about adding bike lanes in a roadway system, I think, you know, the scooters would tend to utilize those spaces. But as far as active transportation, this plan did not include that as one of the modes of transportation that was planned for.
Okay, thank you.
Jake, just so you're aware as well, that discussion is an ongoing one. I know the Jordan River Trail deals with that. And generally they've accepted there those who have handicap motorization. In other words, a wheelchair that is motorized is allowed on the Jordan River Trail. But technically no other motorized forms of transportation are supposed to be on there, of course, except for emergency vehicles. But that discussion is ongoing because there is pressure to add some of those. but no one has figured out a safe way of doing it yet. So just thought I'd update you on that. Discussion goes on fairly routinely with the Jordan River Commission about how to deal with that. So,
Thank you.
okay. Hearing no further comments or questions. Jody, thank you very much. We'll move
Thank you,
on to
everyone.
okay. And we'll go to our next item, which is application ZT-6-2020 to define and establish regulations for outdoor waste management facilities. And we will include with that, when we discuss it next week, Ordinance 20-44. And let's see, who's Mr. Pastorick? Looks like you're on tap again. So take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. So this proposal is actually from city staff, and you'll see in your packet, there's actually two ordinance proposals, and I'll describe the difference between the two. Before doing that, I think it's worth mentioning why we're considering this, or why the staff is proposing this. So we were actually approached by a group that was looking at starting a business that handles the waste that comes from car washes. And so essentially their business would be to go to a car wash, extract the wastewater from the car wash, and then take that waste to a site and essentially have the waste dry on a site, evaporate, and then remove the remaining dry materials and take them to the landfill. And as we were exploring that, our concern as staff we had two primary concerns. One would be smells that could come from this, because if you think about ET technologies that I know we're council's familiar with, that is a similar process of drying material and having the remainders removed. And then also just the aesthetics of a use like that. So initially staff to really put the city in a more protective position, proposed what's labeled as option 1 in your packet. And in that option, we defined a use that we termed outdoor waste management facility. And in that first option, we defined that use and then basically prohibited that use in any commercial or manufacturing zone. After presenting that to the Planning Commission, they discussed that and wanted staff to consider an alternative where a use could be allowed, but under some pretty tight regulations. And so option 2 would allow an outdoor waste management facility in the manufacturing zone as a conditional use if they met certain criteria. And so just the criteria are that it would have to be at least 1,000 feet from a residential use or zone, 200 feet from a high image arterial street. So these would be major streets like 35th South, 5600 West, 21st South. It would need to be screened from public view. In addition to being in the manufacturing zone, it would also need to be in an area that's designated as heavy manufacturing in the general plan. So I'm going to share my screen for a minute and I'll show you where those locations are. So on the map here, you can see there are a couple of areas in the city that are this darker gray color. So one is in the upper northwest corner of the city at the intersection of 7200 West and 21st South, in an area we refer to as the triangle. That dark gray area would be one of those heavy manufacturing areas. The other would be the area around what is now Northrop Grumman, so south of 4100 South and west of 6400 West. So those would be a couple of the areas that are designated heavy manufacturing. And then finally, the fifth condition under option 2 would be that the waste that would be processed could not include any type of human or animal waste or garbage. And so that's what is before the council. So again, you have, just to recap, the first option would be to not allow an outdoor waste management facility in any zone. The second would be to allow them under these conditions that I just reviewed. Any questions on either of those?
I have a couple thoughts, Steve, and maybe a question. So, I mean, ET's not even in West Valley, and it's been
Correct.
a nuisance for years. So to say that we're going to put a fence around it and it's going to be out in the corners, I mean, I don't think that having the facility is really a problem, except for mostly because of odors that may be emitted. And this, I mean, option 2 doesn't, in my opinion, help with that at all.
So if I may, one of the distinctions with ET Technologies, they do actually deal with, my understanding at least, with human waste. And so under option 2, an outdoor waste management facility could not include outdoor waste. But to your point, the reason the staff originally proposed option 1 was it was a more protective position, if you will.
Right, but I mean, that's certainly an obnoxious odor, but there are other obnoxious odors, any sort of chemical drying. I mean, we just don't know until we have it, and then it's too late. So my question really is, what do we have now? We didn't have anything on this, or?
We have in the code now a definition for heavy manufacturing that includes a number of different facilities. So it the most likely would fall under that heavy manufacturing type definition. And so again, the concern from staff was we wanted to get more clarity around this use and try to make a distinction where you're dealing with things outside and trying to do processing or treatment outside.
Seems like this sort of processing could be done inside. It could be done with filters. It could be done in a way that would not be obnoxious. It would just be much more expensive.
Correct.
And would that sort of treatment plant be allowed under option 1, as long as it's not outdoors, correct?
That's correct.
I think it ought not to be outdoors. I mean, I like option 1 better, I guess. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor, this
Yes.
is Wayne. Just wanted to add, I guess, official commentary from the staff standpoint. Steve's done a very good job of representing where he ought to be, both the options and representing what the Planning Commission's thought on this process was. As far as staff goes, our preference is still option 1, just so that was clear in case anybody wondered.
Thank you. I know certainly as I read through this the first time, it kind of struck me that given as we look down the road, maybe a decade or two, you know, West Valley City is going to get more and more built out. And what do we want it to be like in the future? There are some things here now in our city that would be better in other locations, not because they aren't economically viable, but because they don't fit in to wall-to-wall cities and businesses and residences. And this seems to be one of those where it would be a problem. And so I was surprised to find we didn't have more regulation on this. And I certainly support that option 1 as well. It seems to make a lot of sense looking down the road. Any other comments? Question? Hearing none, we will then go on to our resolutions. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
And we will have a number of different resolutions here. We'll just go down through them. Resolution 20-156 to approve a grant agreement with State of Utah Department of Heritage and Arts. Anyone in particular set up to do this one? Oh, yes. Mr. Bruder. Kevin,
Good
go
evening, Mayor and Council. The Maverick Center was the fortunate benefactor of the Create in Utah grant, funded by the Utah Legislature through the Utah Division of Arts and Museums. The grant is for $250,000, and it is for us to move forward with an event, a live event, in which the funds need to be fully expended by December 30th of 2020. We're tentatively targeting an early December Christmas show for this. As part of the grant through the Federal CARES Act, 50% needs to be used for the live entertainment and 50% can be used for overhead of the Maverick Center operation. So we're excited to move forward. I think you can see we're working with a partner on this event, on this show. They did announce an event at Eccles Theater under the same programming type that we're looking at for ours. And it's going to be a safe, socially distanced and masked event in early December. So looking forward to returning to live at the Maverick Center in the appropriate context.
Okay, council members, questions, comments? Well, Kevin, you must have done a great job because no one has any comments whatsoever. We are grateful to have those funds available and look forward to this initial process of kind of returning to a more traditional, at least partially, concert events, in our city. So thank you.
Thank you.
With that, next we go to Resolution 20-157 with our city entering into a memorandum of understanding with the Utah Attorney General's Office for Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. Chief Jacobs, it looks like you're the one to talk about this.
Yes, I'll be happy to. As you stated, this is a grant through the Attorney General's Office. They also partner with the United States Department of Justice Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention to receive this grant. As a result of them receiving that funding on the state level, they partner with local police departments to fulfill the grant. And yeah, sorry, I lost my place. Hang on a second. ICAC we've been a part of ICAC for like 17 years. So this is a recurring grant and partnership that we're a part of. The intent of this program is to properly investigate and prosecute those who sexually exploit children and through the use of internets and computers. Like I said, we've been a part of this task force for 17 years now. We have 2 detectives assigned as a collateral assignment. And this year's grant is less than it usually is, simply because there was carryover funding from this last fiscal year due to COVID.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? I do have a comment. Interestingly enough, one of the lead investigators that used to work in the Attorney General's office on this task force lived in my neighborhood and made me aware of the work that they do. Very, very difficult job, but a very necessary job. And anything that they can do to protect youth and children, especially younger children from this, is just a tremendous work to be done. So certainly appreciate West Valley City, Chief Jacobs, and all the officers in the past who've participated in supporting this effort to investigate, find, and prosecute those who prey upon children.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Not hearing any further comments, we'll go to our next resolution. We probably will do two of them right in a row together. Resolution 20-158, an agreement with Ham Consulting Group, and 20-159, an agreement with DLS Consulting, one at the federal level, the first one, second one at the state level. And so looks like Ms. Cottle is going to have some discussion with this, or Wayne, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, please. Thanks, Mayor. Just wanted to introduce, and of course, I will turn this over to Nicole. She has the detail on how our relationships are going with Mr. Stewart and Mr. Ham. Just wanted to point out that one thing that many of you probably have already noticed, which is in the first resolution, we're actually 1 year behind in our contractual obligation here. That's my bad there. We just plain slipped and missed it, and Ron didn't bring it to our attention. The contract is the same. Ron's doing a great job. We're very happy with him, so there's no issues along that line, but we did happen to let that slip. My fault there on the 1 year. So this is actually for 2 of the 3 years contracted that you'd be approving if the council is willing to do that. And then the Dave Stewart one, the renewal of that one is actually for a 3-year period starting this year. Yeah, with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole.
Okay, council, thank you. I will be quick. As Wayne mentioned, you know, we've had a relationship with Ron Ham at the federal level for quite some time now. The value that he brings to the city, because he understands the finite details of our city and knows things about what's happening with our police department and what's happening in Fairborn Station. And he has that institutional knowledge. He can continually represent us in a way that's very robust. This year has been no exception, as you might imagine. It's been a very hefty federal year for Ron, and he has been really great. There have been times over the 8 months where Ron and I have talked 2 or 3 times a day, and talked with our federal delegation 2 or 3 times a day. So he, of any year that I've been engaged with him, has done some very heavy lifting this year. So we're very appreciative of him. As you heard Wayne say, this is a 3-year agreement, and the way we like to do that is that gives that continuity, as we've talked about before at the federal level. It's a continual legislative session, the way that we would put it. And so to have him on continually for that span of time, and especially because it usually takes us that long to get through federal issues, at least that long. So that works out very best for us with Ron Ham. So that's our federal contract. I can move right on to the state contract if you'd like, Mayor, or?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the contract with DLS is Dave Stewart. As you know, we have had of late with the city council, the discussion about return on investment for our various consulting and lobbying contracts. As you've heard me say in the past, Dave Stewart has a great ROI as it relates to his efforts on behalf of the city, both financially and otherwise. He is not unlike Ron, although Mr. Ham, although we haven't had Dave on quite as long as we have Ron Ham. Dave knows the intricacies of the city. He understands what's happening. He knows the details of our various developments and traffic and infrastructure needs, the things that are happening with our police and fire departments. And so his institutional knowledge is also very vast. And as you've heard me mention before, he's worked for many years to create the relationships that we have currently with the both House and Senate leadership. And his personal relationships with them are also very helpful and robust specifically to us as we move forward. What we're finding is that the state legislature is becoming a continual legislative cycle rather than having a legislative cycle that's about November to March or April, and then having some time that is sort of different kinds of time that's usually not legislative. We're in a very heavy legislative cycle, and we believe that will continue for a year or two at least, so they can continue to have these sessions that are midterm. And so we feel like having Dave on with us in a longer term fashion is the appropriate move. As you'll note, with both of these contracts and with many of our consulting contracts, we have a 30-day out provision for both sides of the contract. And so if we were to be in a position into the future where we need to do that, we're able to do that under the contract as well. I can answer any questions.
Council members?
Yeah, I just, and it's a great report, Nico, appreciate it very much. But I think if you guys have maybe sometimes 6 months, or maybe just don't have to be 6 months, but any cases or any files, those guys, they have their involvement in those cases or those files, just maybe just bring it up and share that information with us. You know what I'm saying? I ran into them a couple of times, long ago. That's probably 8 or 9 years ago. They look like they're very good people. Yeah, they're smart and they know what they're doing. So yeah, if you can share that information with us whenever their involvement with the cases in our city, it'd be nice. Yeah, that's all I have.
I think I would add a comment here. We, sometimes we belong to organizations. I know the Jordan River Commission we're a part of. They do lobby the legislature as well. And since part of the Jordan River is in our city, that benefits us. But there is nothing better than having your interests specifically represented to the legislature and to Congress, to federal agencies, in order to make sure that first our interests are protected. And that's a significant portion of the work, unfortunately. And then as well, other times to assist in obtaining funds and on some level. But I think it is more of a protection to our city to have that, and to make sure that our interests are heard and protected in those areas, and to have the expertise locally to be able to do that. Now, that does not detract anything from our great staff who are exceptional at providing information, working with elected officials. But you cover all your bases in these areas. And so I think a good share of you have met Ron Ham. When we go back on our trips to the National League of Cities, why he often meets with us, and same with Dave Stewart. I used to see Dave a lot more, but not so much anymore. So, but that's okay. I don't need to. So, hearing no further comments, then thank you, Nicole. And we'll move on to our next resolution, which is Resolution 20-160 to approve the purchase of audiovisual equipment from technology providers for use at the Emergency Operations Center here in our city.
Yes.
And okay, I heard someone.
Yes, Mayor Ken Cushing here, Information
Oh,
Technology.
okay. Go ahead, Ken.
We've recently done upgrades to our audiovisual systems in the council chambers and at Harmon Theater and the Cultural Center. And it's now time to upgrade our emergency operations center. I think if there's anything I've learned from the unique events to this year, it's that it's really impossible to prepare for all contingencies. And so what we instead need to do is be able to expand and be able to have more options available to us. And so one thing that we'd like to do with the Emergency Operations Center is update it to new equipment like we have in the council chambers and other places, and allow us to expand and to be able to have satellite systems for the EOC. For instance, if we needed to have the admin conference room be used at the same time in conjunction with the EOC, and to be able to feed audio and video back and forth between those rooms, we could do that. And then maybe also the multi-purpose center, et cetera. So anyway, it's time to upgrade that and make it more user-friendly and more functional than what we've had in the past.
Okay, council members? What's the source of funds for these purchases?
CARES Act funding will be used in order to make the purchase.
So another good sound use for these funds.
Yes.
Hearing, oh, Jake, go ahead.
I'm just curious, with the pandemic, how has that impacted demand for these kinds of products and subsequently pricing considerations?
There certainly for some time, and I think depending on what parts are being ordered, that has had some impact. That did create some delays in the council chambers when we were doing installations there, because there were parts coming from California where people were completely shut down and those things weren't being produced. And so that has been somewhat of an issue, but for the most part, we've been able to get everything we need and roll forward.
Great, thanks.
Council members, just a note, personal note from me. Oftentimes I make comments, they are not directed to council members or to staff, but to the public. Most of the council members, the things I say, they already know and are familiar with, and I'm not sharing much new there. So if you think I get too wordy, well, it's okay. Just let me know. Text me or something. So, okay, Ken, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see, what's our next one? Resolution 20-161, a contract to Teca Aquatics Innovations for replastering of the leisure pool at the fitness center. Jamie, looks like you're ready to go with this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Jamie Young, Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation and the Family Fitness Center Director. We have had a need to replaster the leisure pool, the indoor leisure pool at the Family Fitness Center. And so earlier this year, we solicited bids. We solicited through the newspaper on bid sites, and then also reached out to companies that we know do this type of work. We received 4 proposals. We had a small committee of 3 who evaluated those proposals based on price, warranty, timeline, and references they provided. And there were 3 responsible bids, and we make the recommendation to award the contract to Teca Innovations. It's a company that we've done a lot of work with in the past, and they're very trustworthy and have done really good work for us in the past. So it's our recommendation to award the contract to Teca. Are there any questions about the job or the contracts?
One question. Oh, go ahead, Karen, wasn't it?
Yes. I was just going to ask, have we had this pool resurfaced before?
We've had it resurfaced in the leisure pool a couple of times. Several years ago, there was a federal congressional act to replace all of the drains in the deck. And that was probably about 2000, I believe we figured it was about 2008. And so we had to replace all the drains in the deck so that they couldn't create suction and cause a drowning incident. So it was done then, and then it was done about 4 or 5 years ago when we redid the toys in the leisure pool, and we had to redo it at that time because they had to resurface just based on the construction from those toys. So the leisure pool does require a lot more than the lap pool would.
So about what is the warranty or the life of this resurface?
The warranty is only 1 year, but the life expectancy is 7 to 10 years. It's a little bit different material than what they've used in the past. It's made with quartz, crushed quartz, instead of with basically ground up concrete. And so they feel like the life expectancy is 7 to 10 years in an environment like our leisure pool.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further comments? Hearing none, Jamie, thank you. We'll go on to our next resolution. This one would be 20-162, an addendum to a cooperative agreement between the city and UDOT on 2550 South. And I don't, Wayne, is anyone going to handle this or?
Yes, Mayor, this is Russ Willardson. I can handle this one.
Oh, okay. Sometimes people pop up on my screen with their name and it's really easy. Ah, there's Russ. Okay. And sometimes they don't.
Well, it helps if you turn your video button on. So.
Ah, okay.
So this is an addendum to an agreement that the council recently approved for the city to receive $500,000 in funding from UDOT for the 2550 South project. UDOT determined that they needed to add an addendum to all of their contracts, including the ones that had just recently passed and been approved. So this is merely amending that contract. It basically says that we won't purchase materials from certain companies, which is really not related to this agreement at all anyway. So it's pretty routine, just a housekeeping item that UDOT has asked us to take care of.
Okay, thank you, Russ. Council, any comments or questions? Hearing none. I think Russ has the next one too, right?
Yes, sir. So
this 20-163, approve a purchase of a crack sealer from Wheeler Machinery Company. Sorry, I need to get those in for the record. So didn't mean to interrupt you, Russ. Go ahead.
No, excuse me. So yes, this is just replacing it's 9 years old now, I believe, this crack seal machine. We did have money in the budget to replace it. It was a scheduled replacement, and we'll be purchasing it from Wheeler Machinery on the state contract with the council's approval.
Council members, comments or questions? Hearing none. We'll go on to the next item, resolution on our consent agenda, resolution 20-164, 2 right-of-way contracts to accept 2 underground easements from Salt Lake County. This one's a little different. Don't get a lot of these, but and I guess, Mr. Willardson, you're the one that will answer any questions or comments.
Yes, sir.
Council members? We have had a few underground easements, obviously, but these ones are with the county.
Correct. We've purchased other easements out on that stretch of 3500 South for burying the power lines. And this one is, as you mentioned, Mayor, a little bit unusual because it's with Salt Lake County, but it's on the Hunter Park property.
But needs to be buried there too, so. Hearing no further comments, then Russ, thank you very much. We'll go on now to our communications. The first item is the tow rotation update. Tow meaning TOW. And it looks like Chief
Yes.
Jacobs is back with us.
Just temporarily, I will be turning this presentation over to Sergeant Johnson with our traffic division. He has been hip deep in tow rotations for quite some years now, so he is my most knowledgeable subject matter expert.
So he stuck his toe into this business before.
Indeed.
Okay.
Yes, hi. Hopefully you can see me.
Nope, your camera's off, Jason.
There we go.
There we go.
I'm going to share my screen here real quick. All right, hopefully there's a PowerPoint on everybody's screen.
Yes.
All right, good evening, council, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jason Johnson, a sergeant with the police department. I have a 10-slide PowerPoint about streamlining the police tow rotation program. The police department has created a well-run program, but we need to make the program more efficient. The police department needs vetted companies that adhere to federal, state, local laws, and also follow DOT rules, so we can complete that mission statement that we've got right there on your screen. The rotation companies respond to crashes or vehicle impounds like DUIs. When these tow companies are needed, it's because someone's had trauma and the police department provides this service for them. These tow companies then represent the city. All tow companies that are on the rotation must submit a completed West Valley City agreement and abide by it. The agreement spells out all the things on this list. Multi-page, it's 15 pages is the agreement. Sorry, this is a pretty busy slide about what the tow program management really entails. The program requires constant oversight and management. At the present time, the towing coordinator is spending much more time managing this program than his caseload. So his caseload kind of suffers because this program is getting so big. And at the present, we have 27 companies, but more companies are applying this year. Some of the issues that come up are on the slide. This program demands oversight because people live out of their cars. There's obviously papers, phones, computers, medications, clothing. So we want citizens must ensure we provide the best by staying in contact with tow companies, and doing all the legwork to make sure these are adhering to our agreement. There are so many companies, each requiring annual vetting and regular inspections.
Jason, we're not hearing your audio.
So it wasn't just me that.
Jason, we're not hearing your audio. Maybe you could try shutting down your video, and then we could still hear you. Nope, also no good.
Anything now?
There you are.
Yep, there you go.
Wow, sorry about that. I went through a bunch of slides. Okay.
Actually, Sergeant Johnson, if you'll just back up 2 or 3 and just pick up from there.
Okay, let me see if I can get that. Okay, my
Maybe
screen is now showing the towing program. Is that okay place to start, or do I need to go back further?
Would you go back one more?
Yeah, it's thinking about it.
Well, and now it stopped completely. Shouldn't have said that. Can you restart your sharing?
Yep, let's see if it kicks off here like it's supposed to.
Okay.
Say, hopefully audio and video are working again.
Well, so far.
All right, well, I'll just roll on. Sorry about that. So we're on the daily, weekly towing issues that our towing coordinator deals with. This one, so many people have so much property in their cars, phones, computers, medications, clothing. We want the best for our citizens, and the coordinator must ensure we provide the best by staying in contact with towing companies, completing inspections, and doing the vetting. So this is an every year and also random inspections on trucks, yards, just to make sure they're adhering to our agreement. The towing program, there's so many companies, each requiring annual vetting and regular inspection. The program is just becoming unmanageable. Like I said, we're at 27 and more companies are going to apply this year. Here's just a quick snapshot of some estimations that what the towing coordinator spends his time with when working with the tow companies. Some of these problems grow a little bit bigger than him, and it involves the chain of command here at the police department. We would just like to use our resources wisely and effectively. And right now, there's just so much work, we're not able to accomplish that. All right, we're wrapping up. The big takeaway from the presentation is reducing the number of towing companies will not have any effect on the service we provide for the citizens. But we will save money and time. We'll provide a better service by streamlining the amount of towing companies that need annual requirements, inspections, and communication. So if I can answer any questions, fire away.
Council members?
Sergeant?
Yes, sir.
It's said in there that they're chronically late, they argue with the dispatcher, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
What happens when they do that?
Well, we try to communicate what's the problem first off. If it's, did they get lost, or is this just that they failed to give correct information on what their estimated time of arrival would be? So first step is to really communicate with them, figure out what went wrong, why are we waiting? You have a 20-minute response time, why is it 30 minutes, 40 minutes? And then after that, then we look at suspending.
Okay, and then, you know, it would seem to me if they're arguing with the either the officer that's on scene or the dispatcher, maybe we ought to look at suspending a little quicker.
Yeah. But hopefully we can do that with less companies, and they will maybe act a little bit better when they know that that list is much shorter.
Yes, sir. This is Chief Jacobs. I can also speak to that as we transition to this new process of selecting rotations. We'll be able to modify some of these actions that we're able to take when there's non-compliance. And like Sergeant Johnson said, if we've got 30 companies knocking down our door to be on a part of this rotation, I hope they'll be inspired to comply with the rules.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, officer, are they very, very similar to Don Christensen? They very responsive? Those companies? You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So are you making sure I understand your question correctly? Are they responsive?
Yeah.
So responsive when we communicate with them or when dispatch?
When dispatch or try to get them to the scene or to the site and they kind of come right away, or how is that?
Yeah, the contract we enter in with spells out that we would like a 20-minute response. So they have, part of that agreement is they also have a yard here in West Valley. So after the 20 minutes, then officers start to ask, where's the tow? We need to get the cars off the road, get things cleared up, get traffic flowing again.
Right.
So most companies try to really hit that mark, and we understand there's always times that that's impossible because there's rush hour, they got lost, there's extenuating circumstances. So we look at those before we look at any suspension.
So you share with me, you said they're in-house, so that means they have some a place here in West Valley City they can hold a car over to put the impound?
Yes, correct. They have to have a yard here in West Valley to be part of our rotation.
Okay, that's good. And the price, is it affordable?
The price is set by the state legislature.
So that means we cannot, okay.
Yes, so they set that price and then we make sure that they follow that price. And if we hear that there's a different price that they've charged somebody, then we look at termination from our rotation.
Okay. So basically, they have an in-house with us, and then they can qualify for to do business with West Valley City, correct?
Correct. They have to have a business license.
Okay, and also they have the yard or the place to have the house. I mean, for the car for impound, correct?
Yeah, correct. They have to have that in West Valley City, and it has to be operated during business hours and available during emergencies if people need something out of their car that's a life safety thing like medication.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sergeant, this comes up from time to time. We get towing companies coming in saying that they don't think they're being treated fairly because they can't seem to get on the rotation. But from this presentation, it looks like anybody that will meet minimum requirements can get on the rotation, and it's ballooned up to 27, now to be 30, and who knows how many companies. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. We have not denied a reputable company, and we have not, we've only eliminated companies that haven't been able to live up to the agreement. There's certain equipment requirements in the agreement, and obviously the yard location in West Valley, the 20-minute response time. And if they can't meet those, they can't be on the rotation.
But the new model is going to be to limit it to 5 or 6 companies and they'll get all the business. Is that right?
Well, we wanted to go to 15 and do that by a random lottery. So it's not selected by anybody. It's anybody that wants to put in, it doesn't matter the amount of people, all the companies that could put in, and then we would select 15 by random lottery. And then we would vet those 15 companies. And then we would only be managing 15.
And so then would we have a waiting list for if a company drops off or gets suspended, that the next company is ready to step in, or?
Yes, absolutely. We looked at having 5 standby. So 5, one of the 15 pass our vetting or the agreement.
Okay, is anyone else having a problem with sound?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, Jason, this time it
Yeah.
sounds like it's your mic. The mic itself is cutting in and out.
So I think what he was trying to say was that when we do this lottery draw, it will list all of the companies in order of which they were drawn. And they'll go off of the first 15. If one of those companies is for any reason no longer part of this program, then we'll go to number 16 and then 17. And we'll just continue that way annually.
So will it be an annual draw, Chief, or will the list just keep going in perpetuity? And if I have a new towing company, I sign up at number 40.
It's my understanding that we'll be able to do this annually according to the agreement that legal's writing up for us.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's an annual lottery.
And when are we looking at starting this?
Hopefully the spring that we could put this into place.
Thank you.
Sir, I have a couple more questions. Here, if someone or if some company, they come late, maybe up to 20 minutes, we have any restriction for that?
Yes, we set a time date deadline when they need to submit their packets. And if they're past that, we don't even consider them.
Okay, so if we call them, we ask them and they say, well, I'm gonna be there 20 minutes, but the 30 minutes they show up, or maybe 35 minutes and then do business with them next time, correct?
So the delay in response would warrant a degree of suspension if it comes to that. Probably the more significant issues isn't so much that they're not there within the 20 minutes, is more when they refuse to take a tow, and that causes significant complications along the way.
Yeah, because of traffic flow, we want to do it so we can make the traffic flow keep going, and then people can get out, their way. And so, is there any promotion or any restriction for people? If they're doing very good, they come to only 15 minutes or 10 minutes, and we can promote that company. And any restriction for people with company, they come late, and we don't want to do business with them. We just sign up the contract with them. We don't want to do business with them in the future. We have
But we don't have
a term for that.
We don't have a reward program per se for companies that are coming faster than the 20 minutes. But if somebody comes slower, then that can lead to a suspension if there's chronic lateness.
Suspension, but they still participation for next round.
Right. Or they could lose their place in the rotation list. And so they may get pushed to the bottom of that list.
Sergeant Johnson, could you maybe explain the appeals process that is legislatively mandated?
Yes. So what happens when we're going to suspend or terminate a tow company? The process is that they make a formal appeal to the police department. And how they are conducted now is Deputy Chief Hamilton is basically the judge over the matter, and Bradley Jepson will be his legal advisor. I act as the prosecutor, and then one of the detectives is a witness to whatever we're going to say that part of the contract or agreement they violated. And then the tow company representative is the other half of that and defends what they did or their position or their attorney does.
Okay. It's a lengthy process.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions when you're done, Tom.
I'm done. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, thank you. How many of the tow companies that we have on our list are only dedicated to West Valley City right now?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that many of them work several cities, But
So-
I don't know if ones work exclusively West Valley.
So if they are out on different cities and cannot accommodate our citizens because what is the protocol then? Just go to the next one on the list?
Yeah, if they are in such a time constraint, that is exactly correct. They just lose their place. That tow company goes to the bottom and then we take the next in line.
Okay, how many of these companies have financial obligations for their land leases or their property ownership? By doing this, are we going to put a hardship on these tow companies because they've had to sign a yearly or a 5-year lease?
Yeah, I can't answer that question. I don't know the answer.
I just kind of have a problem with that one. And then I'm just concerned with, you have to have a tow yard in West Valley before you can submit an application. But then if you don't get chosen, you're still on the hook for that property. And I think that's a hardship that is not acceptable for our companies that we're dealing with. And I don't know how to get around that. I mean, for anybody new coming on, I would like to see that they have a letter of intent with a landowner that they're going to lease this property only if it accepted. As we do with developers on land, they don't buy the property until we give them the appropriate zoning. And I think this is just a hardship. I would rather see the police department find an employee that can actually do this job correctly or hire a new person to take care of it. I would hate to get down to just 15 and then have tow companies just totally move out of the city and not have any for our citizens. I think this is a great potential burden on our citizens.
Well,
So
part of
I
that
would like
problem
to
is,
speak. I would like to speak to that, Ms. Lang. So there might be a little bit of confusion. They don't have to have an entire yard. They just have to have like a parking stall in a yard, which is why if you drive down by the shops, you'll see that tow yard that's right next to it. It's got like 20 different signs attached to it because each of those companies has basically a parking spot in that yard.
Correct, but they've had to sign a lease for that parking stall. And then where do they have the property that they take the actual vehicles that they tow?
yeah, that has to be in West Valley. But the other side of this is what I would say is the more companies that are on the tow program, the less money they all make.
I think they
So-
understand. Again,
The more we put on there, the unhappier the companies that are already on our rotation are. Because they make less money every time we add somebody.
correct. But are we, well, I still think we're putting ourselves in a situation that's going to possibly be a problem with not as many tow companies available for the citizens. And I don't know, I just see a lot of hiccups with this going to a smaller amount of companies.
Here, I don't concern much about they make less money or more money, but I'm concerned about the traffic. We need to keep the traffic flow nicely. And that's important. Sometimes I saw that on 35 myself and Redwood Road, it took a little bit longer than 20 minutes or 30 minutes. It is maybe the traffic when the toll car came late or something. I don't know, but the thing is, we want the traffic to flowing nicely. That's what we want, and that's for the citizen, benefit for the citizen in our city. And I don't care about this, the toll company, they make more money or less money. I don't care much about that. That's their business.
Yeah, reducing the number won't affect the speed or response or any of the cleanup.
It's about not cleanup, about it. Time to come in is a bit slow than they're supposed to be. But that just, I just bring it up. That's I'm concerned about. That's all the most thing I'm concerned about. traffic.
This Mayor Bigelow, I thought maybe I'd make some comments here. I think we need to be a bit careful. I am not an expert on the system of towing, although I've been involved in some discussions of it in the past. But I think we need to rely a lot on our staff that if they say it will work with 15, it will. And I think we need to be very careful about whether or not someone is qualified. If they do something, they can become qualified by renting a space, which seems to be a low hurdle to cover. Then if they are more successful, we don't want to get fly-by-night operators or someone who just went out and bought a tow truck and is hoping to capitalize on that. We want someone who is dependable and will respond. This is not a new business. This is not something that hasn't been tried before. Tow companies and police departments working together have done this for years. So I'm a little concerned if we make too many changes in what's required without heavy buy-in from the department already. I do wonder, you're going to go through this lottery every year. Is it possible to do a third of them every year and give them a 3-year contract? I don't know, and maybe that's not done, and if it isn't, then just discard it. I just mentioned it in passing. It seems like we're constantly reworking with as many as 15 new tow companies every year. But that's just...
We're open to suggestions. Nothing set in concrete. We just wanted to follow what other cities around us have done to be a little more successful. We've looked at the Murray model, and that's what they do. They have a random lottery every year, and they select their tow companies based that way, and they have a manageable system. So
if it's manageable, that's a real plus.
So are their tow companies required to be located in Murray as well?
I think they have the same regulations that we do, but I am unsure. I would have to check.
Can you check and get it back to us, please?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
And if you're checking on Murray, maybe you could check a few others to see if that's a consistent policy or just unusual.
Okay.
Since
Yeah,
all police departments, all of them are doing it. So, in fact, that information may already be available out there. Please do not check every police department in Utah, okay? Please
no,
do
Mayor,
not.
I don't think I'll do that.
Pick a handful at the most and just check them just to kind of see.
Yeah. The only thing I'd like to add to that is that we really want their yards here is that citizens then that are in a crash or need their car, it's local, it's right here for them. So they don't have to drive to Bountiful or Midvale or Murray or South Jordan or Draper to get their car, it's right here.
So I understand the convenience of that, but with a yearly raffle or lottery, I think as a business owner, that would be very cumbersome and hard to secure property to be located here. As a business owner, I kind of understand the land ownership, the rental agreements, all that heartache. And if you have to find a yard because you got selected and then get out of a contract because you didn't get selected, I just think that's a burden. I think we should give our tow companies at least a couple years if you're going to do this to work into it, not have it a 6-month process and then all of a sudden, bam, sorry, you have all these long-term contracts that are going to cost you money down the road because we changed our mind on how we're doing this. And I just don't see the practicality for the people doing business in our city that we want to encourage to stay here.
Has the requirement for a yard or a location here in West Valley been in place for a while? And if so, can you estimate how long?
Oh, it's been years since the agreement was drafted. You have had to have a yard here.
Oh, so it sounds like if you have 27 and it's growing, doesn't sound like it might be much of a problem, except for maybe in an exceptional circumstance.
Yeah, but we can certainly push back. We don't have to implement in the spring. It would just, we could do more research, but we do communicate with the tow companies and let them know, hey, we're really looking at this to try to scale the number back. And most of them want that because they don't want all the competition growing, because they lose money the more we add to the list.
Well, that's how every restaurant feels as well, but we still allow them to come in. I had another question and I lost it. I'll be back in a minute. Oh, so our policy has always been you had to have a lease or property before you could even apply to be on the rotation, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I just think that's a burden that is not reasonable. And then after you've applied, how long before you get a response of whether or not you're on the list or not? Is that within 30 days?
Yes, but that can also be dependent on several factors. If they have multiple trucks and multiple drivers, when we go through the agreement, and then we have to schedule the truck inspections, the equipment inspections, and if they fail, then they don't get on the rotation right away. So it's a back and forth as the company meets the terms of the agreement and all the things align so that they can jump in. And once that's done, then they're on the agreement.
Okay, so you're in constant contact with them, inspecting and informing them as what's going on from the day they put in their application. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we have a tow coordinator that one of his main responsibilities is communication with the tow companies.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Hearing none. Then we'll move to the next item. Thank you very much for the information. It's been a lively discussion and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And next we have our building height requirements. And since I don't see anyone, Mr. Pyle. Oh, there's Steve Pastrick popped up finally.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll share my screen again here. So a little bit of background before I go through the slides. A few weeks ago, the council considered a zone change for an apartment development just north of the Maverick Center. And as part of that proposal, there was a section of the building that was or that exceeded our height requirement only by a little bit. But that prompted the council to ask for for a discussion to explore our building heights and consider whether we should amend our building heights. And so this is just in response to the council's request and by way of information. So this first slide here shows the height limitation of various zones. So you can see in agricultural and R1 zones, it's 30 feet. In the R2 or duplex zones in the C1 zone, it's 35. When you get to the RM zone, which is the zone we were looking at a few weeks ago, as well as the C2 zone, it's 75 feet. And then for several zones, we actually don't have a height restriction, with the caveat that in the case of a property being next to residential, then there are some height restrictions that come into play. But when it's not next to residential, there are no height restrictions. So that's an overview of the height limitations. Then the slides that follow really are just examples to give you an idea of the height of different buildings. So this next image is a 2-story townhome with a pitched roof. So you can see to the eaves is 20 feet. And then on a building that's a pitched roof, we actually measure the height at the midpoint of the roof. So you can say you can see the midpoint in this situation is 23.5 feet. So, and this is a townhome building that was recently approved at 35th South and 5600 West. So just an example. The next one is a 3-story townhome building in that same development on 35th and 56th that's just starting construction. You can see that the third level is at 34 and change. And then in this case, these units have a rooftop deck. And so this area here that goes up to 40 feet is the stairway that leads to the rooftop. The next example, each going a little bit taller. This one is the building that's currently under construction, the ICO apartments at Fairborn Station. You can see here the top of the parapet is 46 feet 7 inches. Another building here is an example. This is a Granger Medical. This is the side you'd see from 35th South. So you can see, depending on which portion of the building you're looking at, it varies between 60 and 81 feet at the highest point. Another building that was approved and is under construction. This would be the apartment building at Redwood Road and 4100 South. You can see here that the taller parapet portion there, almost 70 feet. And 2 more examples. So this is the Embassy Suites here at Fairborn Station. You can see the height here ranging from almost 79 feet to the lower parapet to over 92 feet at the tallest portion. And then finally, what I believe is the tallest building now in the city would be the office tower here at Fairborn Station, where you can see the roof deck is at almost 133 feet. And then the solar array that's on top of the building goes up to 156 feet. So again, these different examples were simply to help you visualize what different heights are. And again, this was just provided by way of information, so no recommendations here, just providing some information for the council to consider.
Council, then any questions?
I have one question. In conjunction with this, could we get a presentation from fire? Say an apartment complex goes up that is 80 foot. How many trucks could really respond? What is the likelihood of us getting it under control with some of these taller complexes? Do we only have 1 ladder truck? Do we have 6? What's our ability to work on those?
So we can certainly get you those answers. I don't know that you need a whole presentation for that. That'd be pretty simple to answer in like a memo. Would that be good enough, or do you want a full presentation?
If it's a memo, if we don't have the proper equipment, what it would cost to bring us up to being able to handle it on our own.
So we do have the proper equipment. That's not an issue.
So how many ladder trucks can get to the top of the office complex that's 132 feet?
The question is really not about the height of the ladder trucks. The maximum height of ladder trucks we already have, as high as you can buy. So after that particular height, then you have to start putting into effect protocols and training and procedures to basically get up inside the building, which of course also has to do with how the building itself is constructed for its fire safety practices. Just as an example, think of any real high-rise building anywhere in any big city. There are no ladder trucks that are high enough to get to them. Now, there is another question which kind of goes along the same line as to access, meaning can the ladder truck actually maneuver to the building? And we don't have equipment right now, for example, that would be like some of these 2-part articulated fire apparatus, or tillers is what they're called. That would be the next step for us. We do not have that. But as far as being able to get to our buildings right now, yes, we can get to our buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. You still need a memo or a presentation, or are we good?
Nope, that's fine. Thank you.
I just, this resolution already passed already, the one nearby the tracks, Mavic Center, 75 feet right there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's small area, but so many people in that 2 acres, you know what I'm saying? That I'm concerned about, and the track just very much just around the corner. Concerned about just drunk guy come home at night late, and then just walk down this, that street right there, and the tracks get nearby. Not very concerned about, but I think it's we run out of land. We don't have much land right now, so this I think is the only way we can go up. And just again, just like Ken Lancy says, we need to have a fire truck to take care if something go wrong. And I think if it does work out that way, I'm supportive. I have no problem with that. Mm-hmm.
Hearing no further comments, then we'll go to the next item on our agenda, which is the COVID-19 update you've all received. Any questions on that? Hearing none. Council calendar, any questions? Hearing none. Potential future agenda items. Hearing none. Council reports.
I'm sorry, I forgot to turn up my my mic. I have one for the potential future agenda.
That's perfectly fine. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a small problem. Maybe I need you guys help us out in Chesterfield. Sometimes people they are playing live band in our neighborhood and late at night, and that's caused a problem for the people in Chesterfield. I mean, they're too excited. Maybe the fall, the weather is so nice now, and they were outside. They don't feel like hot, and they just sometimes they overexcited. You know what I'm saying? And that causes a problem. So is there any way we can do something about it? Maybe, I don't know. That's my. I need your help, basically. Mm-hmm. Maybe put an agenda and we can discuss more about it next time.
Well, let's see. If that's a concern, maybe that's something that could be worked out with Wayne.
That'd be nice.
I think it's more a concern in a lot of neighborhoods, not just in Councilman Hoon's neighborhood. I think it's one we need to address of how citizens can get it resolved within their neighborhood.
So what does that mean? Do you want that do you want a communication item on that? What do you want staff to do?
I think so, because when I get phone calls, I honestly I don't know where to refer them.
Well, if all the information you want is where to refer them, we wouldn't have a communication item on that. We would just get you the information through a memo and say, here's what area, who you would have them call, how you would handle that.
That's fine.
Will that be enough?
Sure.
Yeah, for me, I think maybe even
just more basic understanding of what it is. I think so much of these issues, like Councilman Hune has brought up, is kind of a personal preference issue. And I think even when they're brought up in my neighborhood, you know, maybe the neighbor is actually within our sound ordinances. Maybe they're not projecting speakers out on the street. Maybe they're doing everything by the book. But I may not be a huge fan of mariachi or whatever it is that I'm hearing from next door. And that's why I don't like it. But maybe they're doing it within the hours and within the decibel levels and whatever. I don't know. It personally myself, kind of even what those guidelines are. It seems like people just call me or email and say, hey, there's been loud music, but I don't myself know what exactly those parameters are for what is outside of our ordinance for playing music or loud noise.
Yeah, Mr. Pyle, there's already an ordinance on sound, right? And so
There is, it's an ordinance that is actually promulgated by the county, and they basically count on us as an enforcing arm for it. It's pretty unwieldy. It's pretty hard to define. I mean, it's a great question, which what Jake just asked right there, you know, what are the sound levels? How do you determine them? How far away is it? What's the preference, hours, all that. But yes, that is actually defined in ordinance. So if that would take care of the questions of Councilwoman Lang and Councilman Hune and Jake, we'd be glad to put together a memo for you on what the proper procedure is. Of course, the real question may not be covered or apply to what the procedure is for calling in from it, because like Jake just said, a lot of times this is people having a little family or party gathering which has gotten too loud for somebody else in the neighborhood. It can also range all the way up to somebody's putting on an illegal concert and having a mass gathering. So, you know, everything in between that happens.
Well, Ms. Powell, maybe we can approach it this way. Why don't you get that information to those 3 council members? In fact, why don't you share it with all the council members? And if that doesn't answer their questions, they are welcome to bring it up again and say,
absolutely,
you know, it wasn't clear, or we need more work, or okay.
Okay,
Will that work?
For sure. Yep, we can do that.
I know South Salt Lake does an awesome job of enforcing and controlling the noise ordinance. So maybe if we look at their ordinance and how they enforce it, that might be a good place to get some reference.
Sure, absolutely.
We ran into a couple of times last weekend, and it kind of funny. People in Chesterfield, they call in, and then police officer, they said, well, you called me multiple times about this. So don't call me again. So here another matter was the police, they came, and then they came, and then the band, they stopped, and then police, they left, and the band, they came back and again. And that's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great illustration of a problem. So we don't really have the resources to let an officer stand next to a property all night long. We also can't arrest them. Even if we were going to arrest them, they wouldn't put them in jail, which we really wouldn't want to do that anyway, right? In most cases. So it is an ongoing problem. There's no doubt about it.
Is there a way we can like prevent that, or we can figure out how to solve that problem?
I'm sorry, what was that, Tom?
Is there a way we can prevent that, or is there any way we can solve that problem?
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the question we've been wrestling with for as long as cities have existed. So I don't think there is any one solution that has worked in all of these situations, or would, or we wouldn't be having them. More than happy to continue to look at the issue, though, and bring you the information we have. We'll certainly go check into South Salt Lake, see what they're doing, or any place else that anybody has any leads or intel that seems to hear that they're doing a good job with this too. Absolutely.
Okay. With that then, any further potential future agenda items? Then on to council reports.
Mayor,
Any council reports? Don?
just one quick report. You'll have to get your ULCT information from the Friday fax that they send out to everybody. Hopefully you're all on their mailing list, because I'm not going to be attending their meetings anymore.
We saw your email or whatever it was.
Yeah.
The text, so. And that's where we are.
Yep.
Any other reports? Then reviewing the agenda for us, we will have another special redevelopment agency meeting on October 13th. And so who's going to introduce the issue that's there? Wayne?
Mr. Jackson is going to
there he is.
illustrate for us, and he should be ready, Mayor.
Yeah, he was just slow pushing the buttons. So he's up now, but he has to push the unmute button. There we go.
All right, we're good to go. So this is another acquisition opportunity to tie up a pivotal corner as we continue to study this area. This is a lucrative seller finance opportunity that came to us on this 2.5 acre parcel that will cost us only $13,000 a year. And as we have been engaging developers, it is anticipated that one of them will end up purchasing this parcel down the road. So we're excited about this opportunity to acquire this parcel for so little down. It will give us options for future development as we study the area. We as staff recommend the approval of this acquisition. And I turn it back to you, council, for questions.
Council, any questions or comments?
$13,000 per year. So how long is that, Jeff?
So it's a 5-year balloon. So $13,000 a year over a 5-year period of time, and then it will be cashed out from the seller.
Oh, cash out from the seller. And what the balloon number?
It's the contract price is $1,235,000.
For 2 acres, 2.5.
Correct.
Okay.
Hearing no further comments. We have no need for a closed session. So that brings us to the end of our agenda, unless there's anything else from a council member. Sounds like nothing else except our last motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Without objection, then we will stand adjourned. Hearing no objections, we are adjourned and the vote was unanimous. Thank you all, and we'll see you here in about 15, 20 minutes.